Hey everybody, it's Miss A, and I am here with a recap video on the topics that we learned this week in school. This week, for my kids know it, but for parents who don't, it was a super crazy week. We had, Miss Angelo had a sub on Wednesday because I had to go to a curriculum meeting, and we had the ELL department come into our classroom 3 days during math in order to do dictionary lessons, which are absolutely necessary so that the kids are prepared when they use dictionaries, but it did kind of cut back on what we were able to do in math. So I want to recap what we have learned today, or not today, what we've learned this week. So this is a week recap. That's for all of us who may have missed some stuff, and for any of us that need to go over what we were supposed to go over. So this week we focused on our standard, which is G11. That is understanding geometric figures. So, for example, the children had to know what a point was, and this is very strong vocabulary. So we worked on a bunch of vocabulary foldables, vocab foldables, and I will do vocabulary foldables, and I will show you how we make all of these in case your child needs to make one, or for studying, because they do really help us studying. They learned about what a line is and how to the definition, how to draw it, and how to write it. They learned a line segment, and they learned array for one part. They learned angle, right angle, straight angle, acute angle, and obtuse angle. So that was what we focused on at first. A point is a location in space, so location. I'm going to do pretty generic definitions here. The children do have those written in their notebooks, and they do have access to them in the back of the glossary of the book that stays at school. A line is a path of points that continues without end. So points without end. A line segment is part of a line. A ray has one end point and continues in the other direction. An angle is formed by two rays. And then a right angle measures 90 degrees exactly. Straight angle measures 180 degrees exactly. Acute angle is less than 90 degrees, which can range anywhere from 1 degree to 89 degrees, and an obtuse angle is more than 90 degrees, which is 91 degrees to 179 degrees. After 179, it goes to a straight angle, and then after that, it goes to a different type of angle, which isn't required learning for 4th grade. So they have to be able to identify these objects. So we know a point literally looks like a period or a point, and it's always labeled by its letters. A line, so I'm going to write point here, that's that. A line looks like a line with two arrows, and it's labeled by all its letters. So for example, if it's line AB, that's what it would look like, AB. A line segment is part of a line, which would be like this. It'd be the part without the arrows. A, B. A ray it is a one endpoint and continues in the opposite direction. AB, angle is two rays connected with a vertice. Now, angles are written in a certain way. So the angle, the vertex is always the point that has to be in the middle. So you could do angle, it could be ABC, it could be angle CBA. The vertex point always must be the letter in the middle. So that's something that the children need to make sure that they are aware of and can recognize, because they may give answers that do BCA. Well, that is not this angle. The vertex is always the letter that's in the middle. We have the acute, or the right angle. And a right angle makes a 90-degree corner. Now, what children really need to make sure that they understand about this is that right angles could face all kinds of ways as long as they form a 90-degree angle. And that's where I think kids really get confused, because when they see them like this, they're like, that's not a right angle. Or even if they see it like this, they say it sometimes, that's not a right angle. So they need to realize that that right angle, which is required vocabulary, this is part of the standard, it's required vocabulary that they must be able to identify a right angle. It could be like this. Oops, that's not very right angle. There we go, that's more of a right angle. Don't mind my rough drawings. These all represent right angles, and that they need to make sure that they're aware of. All right, I'm going to go to the next page here, running out of space. They need to be aware of straight angles, which look like a line, and it measures 180 degrees. It makes a straight line. Acute angles, which is anything less than 90 degrees. So how we tell children to figure this out, at times you can use the edge of a particular item. So if I put let me try to make this a little bit smaller. This is what we teach them with this. The edge of a piece of paper is a 90-degree angle. So if I were to place my paper at the vertex and then go with one line, if this arrow is inside or falls inside the paper like this one does, this is an acute angle. And let's do this one. So the same principle, I place my paper at the vertex point and I make sure that it runs across the line. And now that I see that the other ray is outside my yellow paper, this is an obtuse angle. So that's a way to gauge the angles. We do not have to measure ourselves with a protractor, so we won't be doing any of that. It's the ability to visualize or use objects to figure it out, and this is one of the objects. So I'm going to draw a couple more of these angles to kind of give you an idea of, just so you can see and the kids can practice how this works. So here I have three angles. If I place my paper at the vertex and run it along this line, you can see that the other ray is on the outside. It is completely aligned with the edge of my paper. That makes this a right angle. So let me give you an example of one we might see. I have to draw it out so it looks perfect. So this here, I would have that. The one good thing about our paper test is we are able to manipulate it, so I can turn it in a different direction. I place my paper at the vertex. I see that it is a complete straight line. This is also a right angle. And the children will have an assessment where they have to evaluate angles, and they can use the strategy of a sticky note. That's something I'll let them use. Here's my next one up here. I place it at the vertex. I run it along my bottom line, and I can see that this is outside. And if I can't physically see it, I can draw a line next to the paper, and I see that it falls inside this frame. This is an obtuse angle. And then my last one, place it at the vertex, run it along the line. I can see that it crosses my yellow paper. This is an acute angle. So that is what partially what we learned. The students do need to be able to identify. So test questions might be something like this. Choose the name of this geometric figure. So that might be a typical type test question, and then it would have something like this. Well, looking at this, I know that that's a line, and so this is how we would write or name it. So when you do that, you put the symbol above and you write the letters. So the students would have to be able to identify the name of the figures, or the figures by the name. So that is something that they would have to be able to do. All right, so that was one day's lesson, and it was a lot of vocabulary in that day. Another day's lesson was parallel and perpendicular lines. The standard for that day was the same because it's still geometric figures. So parallel and perpendicular lines. Parallel and perpendicular lines. So they're still going to have to recognize this. It also includes intersecting lines. So what children need to know about this? This was another foldable graphic organizer, foldable for vocabulary that we did. Parallel lines, and this is, I will tell you how I remember the difference between two. Parallel lines are lines that never touch. Never touch. Much like the L's in parallel. Those two L's will never touch. So they'll never touch. They'll never have points where they cross. Perpendicular lines make 90-degree angles. So a perpendicular line would be something like this. And there are lines, so they'd look like this. It makes a 90-degree angle. That's perpendicular. They have to make that 90-degree angle. And again, we could use the strategy of vertex, putting our little paper there, and then seeing that it runs right along the edge of the paper for our perpendicular line. The last one is intersecting lines. Intersecting lines cross at one point. It could look anything like this. It could look like this. It could look like this. They cross. There's always obtuse angles. Obtuse. And I can check that with my paper. I put it in the vertex. And then I can see that this part is inside my angle. So it makes two obtuse angles. The opposite angles are obtuse. These two match. And these two angles are acute. So two obtuse angles and two acute angles. Two obtuse and two acute. That was something that they had to do this week as well. I hope this video helps. Please use these videos for your study guides when you go to practice for your tests. I'll always let you know when your test date's up, and I'll always put a study guide up on YouTube. Thanks everybody for watching. Make sure you hit a like and subscribe. If you have any questions, put it down in the comments.